"Mia, I got the scholarship," my brother Ethan called from downstairs, his voice echoing through our family home in Thornfield with pure, unfiltered joy. I should have been happy for him. Instead, I felt my world collapse in slow motion, because 3 hours earlier, I'd overheard my parents on the phone with the insurance company, and I knew exactly what they'd chosen between his college tuition and my life-saving treatment. When I realized what that choice meant, I never looked at family loyalty the same way again. The letter was sitting on my nightstand when I woke up that crisp Tuesday morning in late October, positioned right next to my peel organizer and the stack of medical journals I'd been obsessively reading for weeks. Bright white envelope. Clearwater Medical Institute logo embossed in navy blue in the corner, the kind of mail that either saves your life or destroys any remaining hope you've been clinging to. I'd been waiting for this correspondence for exactly 17 days. Ever since Dr. Samantha Chen set me down in her pristine office on the 14th floor of the Riverstone Medical Tower and explained, with the careful precision of someone who delivered this speech too many times, that the experimental immunotherapy treatment could give me what she called a real fighting chance. "It's not covered by standard insurance protocols, Mia," she'd said, her intelligent dark eyes behind designer glasses carrying the weight of too many conversations exactly like this one. "The treatment is still in phase 3 trials, which means insurance companies classify it as experimental rather than essential care. But with your specific genetic markers, the BRCA2 mutation combined with your particular tumor characteristics, this could genuinely be the difference between managing your condition for whatever time remains and actually beating this thing completely." Dr. Chen had been my oncologist for 8 months now, ever since my world got turned upside down by a routine mammogram that revealed what she delicately termed suspicious tissue formations. She was brilliant, compassionate, and had a reputation throughout Millbrook County for being the doctor who didn't give up on patients when standard treatments failed. If Dr. Chen said this experimental therapy was my best shot, I believed her completely. The number at the bottom of the letter made my stomach drop like I'd just missed a step going downstairs. $52. $847. That was the total cost for 6 months of cutting-edge immunotherapy treatment that could potentially save my life. For context, that was almost exactly what my brother Ethan needed for his final year at Westmont University, the prestigious biomedical engineering program he'd worked toward with single-minded determination since he was 14 years old. I was 32 years old, living back in my childhood bedroom in Thornfield Heights after my diagnosis had forced me to leave my marketing coordinator position at Brennan and Associates in downtown Riverside. The irony wasn't lost on me. The responsible daughter who'd always been the family's emotional backbone and financial safety net was now the one who desperately needed both emotional support and financial help. The same bedroom where I'd studied for my SATs, where I'd planned my college applications, where I'd dreamed about my future career, had become my recovery space filled with medical equipment, prescription bottles, and the constant low hum of anxiety about what came next. The walls were still painted the soft lavender color I'd chosen when I turned 16, though now they were covered with appointment cards, medication schedules, and inspirational quotes I'd printed out during my more optimistic moments. My old desk, where I used to write papers and college essays, now held a pharmacy's worth of medications, supplements, and the notebook where I tracked my symptoms, side effects, and questions for Dr. Chen. I sat on the edge of my bed, still in my pajamas, and read through the letter 3 more times. The clinical language couldn't hide what this really meant. This treatment represented my best chance at seeing 35, at maybe getting married someday, at possibly having children, at having any kind of future that extended beyond the carefully worded prognosis discussions that had become a regular part of my medical appointments. The house was already awake around me. I could hear my mother, Victoria Ashford, moving around downstairs in the kitchen, probably starting her morning routine of coffee, toast, and obsessively checking her email for work updates. Mom had always been a creature of habit, but since my diagnosis, her routines had become almost ritualistic, like if she could control the morning coffee and breakfast timing, She could somehow impose order on the chaos that cancer had brought into our lives. Through my bedroom window, I could see my father, Robert Ashford, in the backyard, methodically raking leaves from our ancient oak tree, the same tree Ethan and I had climbed as kids. Where we'd built a tree house that still stood, weathered, but sturdy, in the highest branches. Dad had always used yard work as his way of processing stress, and lately, our lawn had never looked better. Every blade of grass precisely trimmed. Every flower bed meticulously maintained, every fallen leaf quickly collected and composted. It was his way of creating control in a situation where he felt completely powerless. My parents had been incredibly supportive since my diagnosis, don't get me wrong. They'd driven me to every appointment, sat with me through chemotherapy sessions, researched treatment options, and converted the guest bathroom into what was essentially a sterile medical preparation area. But I also knew they were struggling financially in ways they tried to hide from both Ethan and me. Dad's small accounting firm in downtown Thornfield had lost several major clients during the economic uncertainty of the past year, and Mom's position as a high school guidance counselor, while stable, had never been particularly lucrative. They'd already taken out a second mortgage on the house to help cover my initial treatment costs that insurance didn't fully cover. I'd seen the bills. Even though they tried to keep the financial stress away from me, I knew they were worried about retirement savings, about maintaining health insurance, about all the normal financial pressures that families face, compounded by the extraordinary costs of serious medical care. And then there was Ethan, my younger brother by 4 years. Ethan had always been the family's shining star, the one everyone knew would do something extraordinary with his life. While I'd been a solid student who worked hard for good grades, Ethan had been effortlessly brilliant, the kind of kid who understood calculus concepts while other students were still struggling with basic algebra. He'd graduated high school as valedictorian, earned a full academic scholarship for his first 3 years at Westmont University, and was now completing his senior year in biomedical engineering with a focus on medical device innovation. Ethan was good. Not just smart, but genuinely good. He volunteered at the local children's hospital, tutored struggling students for free, and had spent his summer breaks working on research projects aimed at making medical devices more accessible for low-income patients, the kind of person who would probably end up inventing something that would help thousands of people live better lives. His scholarship had covered tuition for his first 3 years, but it didn't extend to his final year. The university had explained that final year students were expected to demonstrate their commitment to their field through what they called investment in their own educational outcomes. Basically, they had to pay their own way for senior year, as proof that they were serious about their career plans. It was an old-fashioned policy that frankly seemed designed to exclude students who couldn't afford to prove their dedication through financial sacrifice. Ethan had been working part-time jobs since his sophomore year, saving every dollar he could for this final year. He'd also applied for dozens of additional scholarships and grants, but competition was fierce, and most had been awarded to students whose financial need was even more desperate than ours. He needed approximately $51,000 to cover tuition, fees, and living expenses for his final 2 semesters. The math was simple and brutal. My experimental treatment cost $52,847. Ethan's final year cost $51,000. Our family had access to approximately $53. Zero in available funds if they liquidated their remaining savings, took out additional loans against the house, and borrowed against Dad's retirement account. They could afford one or the other, but not both. I folded the letter carefully, my hands shaking slightly, though whether from the medication side effects or emotional stress, I couldn't tell anymore. The morning sunlight streaming through my bedroom window felt incongruously cheerful, like the world hadn't gotten the memo that everything had just changed. I could hear normal sounds from the neighborhood, dogs barking, cars starting as people headed to work, children laughing as they waited for school buses. Everyone else's life was proceeding normally while mine hung in the balance of an impossible choice. I walked to my bedroom door and stood there for a moment, listening to the familiar sounds of our family morning routine. Mom humming while she prepared breakfast, Dad stamping his feet on the back porch to shake leaves off his boots, the coffee maker gurgling its completion signal. Normal sounds from a normal family dealing with an absolutely abnormal situation. Taking a deep breath, I walked downstairs to find my parents sitting at our old maple kitchen table, the same table where we'd done homework as kids. Where we'd had family meetings about everything from vacation plans to household rules, where we'd celebrated birthdays and discussed report cards and navigated all the normal dramas of family life. Now it was covered with a neat stack of medical bills, insurance correspondence, and what looked like financial documents spread across the surface like pieces of a puzzle they were trying to solve. My mother looked up as I entered the kitchen, her face immediately shifting into the carefully optimistic expression she'd perfected since my diagnosis. Victoria Ashford had always been beautiful, but lately she looked tired in a way that went deeper than just lack of sleep. Her auburn hair, usually perfectly styled for her workday, was pulled back in a messy ponytail. And she was wearing the old Northwestern University sweatshirt she'd owned since her college days, her comfort clothes, which meant she was more stressed than she wanted to admit. "Good morning, sweetheart," she said, standing up to pour me coffee without asking, the way she'd done every morning since I'd moved back home. "How are you feeling today? Did you sleep okay?" Taking a deep breath, I walked downstairs to find my parents sitting at our old maple kitchen table, the same table where we'd done homework as kids. Where we'd had family meetings about everything from vacation plans to household rules, where we'd celebrated birthdays and discussed report cards and navigated all the normal dramas of family life. Now it was covered with a neat stack of medical bills, insurance correspondence, and what looked like financial documents spread across the surface like pieces of a puzzle they were trying to solve. My mother looked up as I entered the kitchen, her face immediately shifting into the carefully optimistic expression she'd perfected since my diagnosis. Victoria Ashford had always been beautiful, but lately she looked tired in a way that went deeper than just lack of sleep. Her auburn hair, usually perfectly styled for her workday, was pulled back in a messy ponytail. And she was wearing the old Northwestern University sweatshirt she'd owned since her college days, her comfort clothes, which meant she was more stressed than she wanted to admit. "Good morning, sweetheart," she said, standing up to pour me coffee without asking, the way she'd done every morning since I'd moved back home. "How are you feeling today? Did you sleep okay? I thought I heard you moving around pretty late last night." Dad looked up from the papers he'd been studying, his reading glasses perched on the end of his nose. His graying hair sticking up slightly where he'd been running his fingers through it, a sure sign he'd been wrestling with numbers that wouldn't cooperate. Robert Ashford had always been the steady one in our family, the one who could fix anything that was broken and solve any problem that arose. But cancer wasn't something he could repair with the right tools and enough determination. And I could see how much that frustrated him. "Morning, Mia," he said, attempting a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Dr. Chen's office called yesterday afternoon to confirm your appointment next Tuesday. Apparently, they want to discuss some new treatment options." I sat down at the table, cradling the warm coffee mug between my hands, and placed the letter from Clearwater Medical Institute directly between the sugar bowl and Mom's crossword puzzle right in the center of their organized chaos of medical and financial paperwork. "We need to talk," I said, my voice steadier than I expected it to be, "about choices." The silence that followed was immediate and heavy, the kind of quiet that settles over a room when everyone knows something important is about to be said. Mom set down her coffee cup with unusual care, and Dad slowly removed his reading glasses, giving me his complete attention in the way he'd always done when one of his children needed to have a serious conversation. Outside, I could hear Ethan's alarm clock going off in his bedroom upstairs, the same annoying buzzing sound he'd been ignoring for approximately 15 minutes every morning since high school. In a few minutes, he'd come rushing downstairs, grab a piece of toast and his backpack, and head off to his Tuesday morning advanced materials engineering class, completely unaware that his future was sitting in an envelope on our kitchen table. "What kind of choices, honey?" Mom asked quietly, though something in her expression suggested she already knew this conversation was going to change everything. "Before I tell you about the conversation that shattered everything, you need to understand what our family was like before cancer became the uninvited guest that took over our lives. You need to know who we were when things were normal, because that's what made the choice so devastating." The Ashford family had always operated on a simple principle: we took care of each other. No matter what. It wasn't something we talked about explicitly, it was just woven into the fabric of who we were, passed down through generations like our grandmother's china or my father's stubborn streak. When one of us needed help, the others stepped up. When one of us succeeded, we all celebrated. When one of us struggled, we figured it out together. I had been the family's unofficial coordinator for as long as I could remember, not because anyone asked me to be, but because I was good at it and because I genuinely loved taking care of the people I cared about most. I was the one who remembered everyone's birthdays and organized the celebrations. I planned our family vacations down to the last detail, researched restaurants, booked hotels, and made sure everyone had what they needed. When Mom got overwhelmed with her guidance counselor responsibilities during college application season, I'd help her organize student files and create tracking systems. When Dad's accounting practice got busy during tax season, I'd handle his appointment scheduling and client correspondence. And Ethan had always been my special project. He was 4 years younger than me, which meant that by the time he started school, I was already the big sister who walked him to his classroom, helped him with homework, and made sure the older kids didn't pick on the smart, slightly awkward kid who preferred building robots to playing sports. When he got interested in science competitions in middle school, I drove him to practices and sat through countless robotics tournaments, cheering louder than anyone when his team won and consoling him when they didn't. When Ethan started high school and discovered his passion for biomedical engineering, I was the one who helped him research summer programs, edit his scholarship applications, and navigate the complex world of college admissions. I spent hours helping him prepare for interviews, driving him to campus visits, and celebrating every acceptance letter like it was my own achievement. This wasn't sacrifice, it was joy. Watching Ethan grow into this brilliant, compassionate young man who wanted to use his intelligence to help people had been one of the greatest privileges of my life. When he got accepted to Westmont University's competitive biomedical engineering program with a full academic scholarship, I cried harder than he did. When he called home after his first successful research presentation, I was the first person he wanted to tell. When he struggled with organic chemistry his sophomore year, I found him a tutor and helped him create study schedules until he not only passed but excelled. Our family had always been close, but we'd grown even closer after I graduated from college and started my career in marketing. I'd gotten a good job at Brennan & Associates, a mid-sized marketing firm in downtown Riverside, about 40 minutes from Thornfield Heights. The position paid well enough that I could afford my own apartment. But I chose to live at home for the first 2 years to help with family expenses and to be around for Ethan's final years of high school. Eventually, I did get my own place, a cute one-bedroom apartment in Riverside's Arts District, but I still came home for dinner at least twice a week, spent most weekends with my family, and remained deeply involved in everyone's lives. It felt natural, comfortable, and right. I loved my job, I loved my family, and I had a boyfriend, Marcus, who understood and appreciated how important my family was to me. Life was good. Not perfect, not without challenges, but genuinely good in the way that makes you grateful when you stop to think about it. My parents had built a stable, loving home in Thornfield Heights, a small city about an hour north of the state capital. Dad's accounting practice had grown steadily over the years, serving local businesses and families with the kind of personal attention that larger firms couldn't provide. He was respected in the community, served on the school board, and had built a reputation for honesty and reliability that kept clients coming back year after year. Mom loved her work as a guidance counselor at Thornfield High School, the same school Ethan and I had attended. She had a gift for connecting with teenagers who felt lost or overwhelmed, and over her 15-year career, she'd helped hundreds of students find their paths to college, trade schools, or career. Even as a college student, Ethan came home most weekends, partly because he genuinely enjoyed spending time with family and partly because Westmont University was only about 2 hours away. He'd arrive Friday evenings with bags of laundry and stories about his classes, his research projects, and his friends. Saturday mornings, he'd help Dad with yard work or household projects, and Saturday afternoons were often spent with me, either helping me with something or letting me help him with scholarship applications, resume editing, or just talking through whatever was on his mind. Sunday dinners were sacred in our family, no matter what else was going on. We gathered around that maple kitchen table for Mom's home-cooked meals and conversations that rang from current events to family gossip to Ethan's latest academic achievements. We'd linger around the table long after the dishes were cleared, talking and laughing until someone finally acknowledged that it was getting late and we all had work or school the next day. This was our rhythm, our normal, our foundation. We were the kind of family that other people described as close-knit or really supportive of each other. We were the family that friends wanted to be part of, that neighbors could count on in emergencies, that teachers pointed to as an example of what family engagement in education looked like. I'm telling you all this because I want you to understand that what happened wasn't the result of a dysfunctional family or people who didn't love each other. This wasn't a family where money had ever been more important than relationships, or where anyone had ever been treated as expendable, or where anyone had a history of making selfish choices. We were normal people who loved each other deeply. Faced with an impossible situation that had no good answers, the cancer diagnosis had certainly changed our family dynamics, but not in ways that damaged our relationships. If anything, it had brought us closer together. Mom and Dad had immediately reorganized their schedules to accommodate my treatment needs. Mom used her personal days and sick leave to drive me to appointments, and Dad rearranged client meetings so he could be available whenever I needed support. Ethan had been incredible throughout my diagnosis and treatment. He'd researched my specific type of cancer extensively, learned about treatment options, and even reached out to professors at Westmont who had connections to cancer research programs. He'd spent his spring break at home helping me organize medical files and creating spreadsheets to track symptoms, medications, and appointment schedules. When I felt too sick to cook or clean, he'd take over household tasks without being asked. When I felt discouraged or scared, he'd sit with me and talk through the science of what was happening in my body in a way that was both reassuring and empowering. My parents had been managing the financial stress of my medical care as quietly as possible, trying not to burden either Ethan or me with their concerns about money. But I wasn't naive. I knew that cancer treatment was expensive even with good insurance, and I knew that our family's finances had been stretched in ways they'd never experienced before. Still, we'd found ways to make it work. Dad had taken on additional clients, even though it meant longer hours and more stress. Mom had started tutoring students privately in the evenings to bring in extra income. I'd moved back home partly to save money and partly because I needed the support, but also because it allowed me to contribute my savings to family expenses rather than paying rent somewhere else. We'd maintained our Sunday dinners, our family traditions, our commitment to supporting each other through difficult times. Even with the stress of my diagnosis and treatment, we'd found ways to celebrate Ethan's academic achievements, to acknowledge Dad's professional successes, to recognize Mom's impact on her students. This was still a family that worked, that loved each other, that believed we could handle whatever challenges came our way if we faced them together. Which is why the conversation I was about to have felt so impossible, because I was about to ask the people who had always taken care of me to choose between my life and my brother's future. I was about to put my parents in a position where any choice they made would feel like a betrayal of their values and their love for their children. As I sat at that kitchen table, holding the letter from Clearwater Medical Institute and watching my parents' faces shift from morning contentment to concerned attention, I knew that everything was about to change. not just for me, but for all of us. The family that had always found ways to support everyone was about to discover that some problems can't be solved with love, determination, and careful planning. Some problems require choices that no family should ever have to make, and I was about to find out exactly what those choices revealed about the people I thought I knew better than anyone in the world. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.